Hello everybody and welcome to EPR's very first track guide. I'll be your driver, guide and host, Bopop97, as we tackle the Mercedes powerhouse of the Hockenheimring. Now just before we get started on this track guide, I would like to make everyone aware of what I'm setting the benchmark for this entire Grand Prix in qualifying. I would like everyone in the league to try and approach a 1 minute 12.7. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the pole time at all. This is just what I have been able to maximize out of the default setup. So I'd like everyone to try and aim, especially if you're on the slower end of the grid, to aim for a 12.7. And, I mean, my recommendation for trying to get a perfect lap around this track, if you have a Brazil sort of setup, or Britain, that is quite key because the amount of corners that are on this track, you might think you need a high amount of downforce, but it's not all that much. At maximum, you'll need about 4 on the front and 6 on the rear. That's just what I reckon would be the best for this particular track, but you can choose it to how your driving style particularly is. Anyway, let's get on with the track guide, shall we? Trying to get a flowing run, go down 1 gear into 5th, high deployment mode, into hot lap, opening the DRS, brake at the 100 meter board. And now this is where your first obstacle comes, turn 1. See that orange curb on the right? Sorry, I'm getting my right to left mixed up. If you attack this too hard, you're going to end up spinning on the entry of the curb and possibly blocking someone on the way out of the pits. However, if you attack the exit too hard, you're going to end up spinning and possibly into the barriers over on the left. For a good example, use Valtteri Bottas from this year's Grand Prix. Attacked the inside far too much and he ended up spinning at the exit, albeit it was a very damp track, but you can never know. You can't take liberties with the curbs on this track. So I recommend, well, if it's a problem for you particularly, try and harden the anti-roll bars just a slight bit and maybe fiddle about with the springs as well, because this is very driver dependent on how it feels to you. Some drivers might find that they understeer a bit, some might find they understeer into it a bit. Again, this is all down to how you personally drive. Open the DRS, probably into high deployment mode coming up to turn 2. Not too much of a problem corner this one, because if you go wide, you can take that momentum coming up to the straight, where a lot of overtaking is sure to be done at this weekend's race. Opening the DRS up into overtake mode, try and maximise the straight line speed. And also, just one more point that I'd like to point out, this is going to be a prime example of where you can think about how to approach the hairpin, because you can use the downshifts to your advantage as a rotational mass. As you'll notice here, as I'm going to the lower end of the gears, I'm starting to slow down my downshifts, because once I get into first gear, I want to be able to use that first gear as rotation rather than actual speed scrubbing. So I can manage to hit the apex, which I missed. And because I'm using that rotation, I can get a really good exit with good traction on the exit of the corner. So if you're running no traction control, this might be a bit of a key for you. Braking at the 50 meter board for the next tricky corner, which I suspect isn't all that bad just by looking at that orange curb, because looking at it, most of the tracks, they're there to like make sure you don't cut the corner or anything, which means that it's probably going to be absolute hell for your suspension. I don't find this to be the case. For example, I take as much inside curb as I can, but this part here is very, very critical to getting a banging lap around here. Hit the exit. Hit the inside, and hit the inside as well, but also you want to hit the outside of this curb here, but try not to go too wide because you've got mini sausage curbs on the exit as well. So try and be very gentle with the use of the curb here, because if you go far too wide, you're going to end up hitting those sausage curbs and unsettling the car's balance. Going down one gear into the corner, approaching the Sachs curve. This is again where you can feel like, this is personally where I think you can feel if the lap was good or not. Because if you get such a good flowing run, you can easily gain about half a second, just if you manage to pin that accuracy of this corner so right. And another critical moment I cannot emphasize enough. Going down too many gears and tucking to the inside and you will spin. Go down too few gears and carry too much speed, you'll end up going wide into the DHL sign. I'd be more critical of the going down too many gears. So for me, third gear at the Sachs curve is perfect, but if you want to go into second, you're running a risk of possibly losing the rear end and spinning because of how the camber of this corner is set. It's going to sort of depress the rear end of the car, meaning that the tyres are going to be overloaded with pressure, and if they're overloaded with pressure, especially if the tyre temperatures are quite high, you're going to end up spinning around, where Sector 3 is such a crucial point. Again, Sector 3, you're going to really need to make sure that you have the Brazil sort of suspension style, because you're going to want that fluidity going over the curbs, but you're going to want the stiffness of the actual chassis so that the car doesn't unsettle itself too easily, because this section of corners just after the Sachs curve, you do not want to be hitting any of the curbs, especially if you're running zero traction control, because that is how you can ruin your lap very easily. Now coming up to the drag strip, maximise the exit of the curb, down one gear into fourth, pinch the inside, out on the exit, into high deployment mode and across the line, and that is how you set a lap time around the Hockenheimring. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. I've been Bopop97, and thank you for watching EPR's very first track guide. See ya, bye bye.